This is the Global Broadcasting Service, serving remote outposts since 1928.
Hi, everyone. Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express Monorail.
Caramba, we have something really big for you today.
Welcome, foolish mortals.
Now then, hang on to them hats and glasses, because this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
This is the DBC Pod with Phil Schoen and Jason Dodge. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's pod. This is the week in review of August 28th, 2021, and the second week in a row we're recording on a Saturday night, actually the day of review, Phil.
That we say the dates are of, so it's very exciting.
Yes, so it's perfect. So we are not one day lagged of news. We're up to date. Not that really anything happens on a Saturday into Sunday. Anyway, your guys are catching us in between vacations. I got back from my vacation yesterday. Phil's about to go on vacation tomorrow. Yes. And the wife and his kiddos got back from another vacation from Disney World, which we'll be talking about later, maybe a week or two. We might have a trip report episode.
I think that could be fun, yeah.
With the wife, I think that'll be fun. We talked about that last week, I think. That being said, there's some coronavirus news, some good news, some trending that you'll see. We'll still be talking about that a little bit. What else we got to say? Some Enchantment news that we're going to hit out at the top of the news segment. But before we get to that, we're going to hit up the DCI, which we have some changes here. So currently right now, we're sitting at 69.60%. So close to that 70%
I
mark.
know. Can't quite get to that 70 thing.
Can
we round up? Can we round up to 70?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's arbitrary at this point, like what's 70% mean? But we're doing good. So, like, what are some of the things that have popped up that put these numbers up? There's some Animal Kingdom Lodge stuff that reopened. Tokyo Dining, Pumbaa's Fun and Games Arcade reopens. I don't know how that kind of affected the meter, but something else opened.
That was like a sign, though, of just how detailed Matt gets with this, that there's points allocated to the Pumbaa's Fun and Game Arcade. So
right. So what I kind of find fun with this stuff is – well, it's actually interesting. So we're unfortunately in a Delta wave right now, but Disney's slowly opening. Mm-hmm. I can only ask if things weren't as hot as they were in Florida and the rest of the South, would the index be higher? I would say no, only because Disney's probably struggling hiring people, and I think that's going to remain the same no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So for those out there that are thinking about canceling because of they're afraid of what's not going to be there, I almost guarantee the only thing that's going to change is a masking mandate, essentially. In
the only other kind of, I guess, rumor, or we're hearing some reports, is that they might push back the opening of one of the All-Stars that was scheduled to open next month. Some people are reporting that they were getting moved over to Pop or other resorts, so that it might get pushed back to November or December, the opening of that. But
and I think that's only I think that's only because of not crowd control, I guess. They don't want as many people on property, I would imagine. So that being said, Phil, why don't you take it on with the news this week?
So the first news item, which I thought was kind of interesting and got a little bit of chatter going more for some of the details that were talked about it, and it's that what Jason mentioned previously about more information related to Disney Enchantment, which is the new fireworks show that is coming to the Magic Kingdom for the 50th, replacing Happily Ever After. So it's got some big shoes to fill, but they released some more information about it. They mentioned that it will include an original song entitled "You Are the Magic" by 7-time Grammy winner Philip Lawrence. I actually wasn't familiar with him. I looked him up. Sounds like he writes or works with Bruno Mars. So a lot of his wins were related to songs that you probably know by Bruno Mars, like 24K Magic and Uptown Funk and stuff like that. So
a big favorite of my mother.
So I'm picturing those types of songs and kind of like that feel of music that I guess is going to be included in it. What got a lot of the chatter about it was that they went into what IP or what characters, Disney characters, are going to appear in Disney Enchantment. And they seem to mention a lot more, say, current or more modern characters. So they talked about Tiana and Miguel, Rapunzel, Ian and Barley from Onward, Moana, Raya, Judy Hopps, Joe Gardner from Soul, and stuff like that. So people are saying, like, is this really celebrating sort of the history of Disney, or is it more just kind of what are the newer, more current music things? I mean, they obviously still talked about there's going to be Beauty and the Beast, and it mentions Mary Blair, which I'm excited for. And
that's going to be awesome.
So there's definitely still some classic things, and obviously it'll depend on the mix.
And you still got Tinkerbell, obviously.
And it did. That was a big thing, which some people are saying like, oh, maybe they should have kept that as a surprise. But it did say that Tinkerbell will take flight like she currently has been for the past few shows. So that's always an exciting moment.
I don't think you can leave that out only because people are just going to assume that it's going to be there.
I think
so
at this point, yeah. I know that with Happily Ever After, people were wondering because, that was kind of, I think, came with wishes. So like, oh, is it going to keep it? So when it happened, everyone, that was kind of like the moment. So people were wondering if we would have that. But like you said, I think people were like, well, it's got to be there, right? So
yep.
They confirmed it, which is good, though. Better than
my surprise is like with even some of like the recent stuff like Onward, Soul, and Luca that are going to be included in this. I think that's kind of interesting. Most welcome. I mean, not saying that they shouldn't put them there. It's kind of surprising that they're putting those characters in the show so quickly, I guess.
Yeah, and so quickly.
Is it quickly? But whatever.
And some of those aren't really known for their music, right? It's not like there's some amazing classic songs in Onward and stuff like that. So maybe they'll just be featured like a little bit in the exactly, with Raya. So maybe it'll just be some of the projections that are shown during like the original song and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But obviously, no matter what they do, people would complain. I always try to think though, like as much as I like all the classic movies and stuff, there's probably a lot of people that are in the parks that have seen Raya 10 times and have never seen Pinocchio and stuff like that, like that only know the newer stuff. So
hush your mouth. That can't be possible.
That can't be possible. So they got to have stuff for everybody. But
my daughter's never seen Pinocchio, I don't think.
Oh, well,
my 3-year-old, I'm going to say. Yeah. She's now on I'm just little tangent here. She's now on a Moana kick, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So last weekend before vacation, she watched. She wasn't feeling well. COVID negative, if anybody's wondering. But she had like a little summer cold, right? Little throat frog in the throat type of thing, and she watched Moana 4 times in one day.
Wow.
I mean, it was just on repeat. And the day before it was 3 times in the background. I was just kind of just resting a little bit. So that's her first Disney obsession is Moana, and I don't mind because it's one of my favorite soundtracks over the last I would say 20 years easily.
Yeah. Oh, it's great songs.
Just a tangent, by the way. Actually, my daughter's was Frozen, or my oldest daughter was Frozen. She's now 8, so my youngest is Moana. So I'm gonna keep track of that. My son doesn't care about any of the Disney princess movies, but he loves Avengers. So there you go.
So we'll see if they have any of the Avengers or anything, or Star Wars or anything like that, with the new show. But we'll see. So the next news item, speaking about updates to things, Disney Parks blog released a video. It's actually about a half hour long where they had a number of the Imagineers that are working on the redo for Splash Mountain to be rethemed to Princess and the Frog. They gathered around a table to sort of talk about, the process and what they're going through and the thought process. Really interesting video, kind of hear, whenever you can hear from these people, it's always great to understand where they come from. But they also shared that there was some artwork that was done to help inspire them and inspire the ride. And they did talk about that the story is going to take place after the final kiss in the movie. So it's not a retelling of what happened in the movie. It's a new story that takes place after the movie. And as Tiana is going to be hosting a one-of-a-kind Mardi Gras celebration, the part that I found interesting when it says during which some original music inspired by the songs will bring guests into the story. So they're not going to use necessarily the actual songs from the movie.
That's weird.
Which I was a little surprised about. I mean, I think that has some great songs. So maybe they're kind of overplaying that a little bit, and it'll really be, you'll hear tunes from the song, but they'll add some new parts to it or something.
I mean, people don't want to go on rides and hear new stuff from a movie that they like. They want to hear the classics.
It's one thing if they had maybe one song or something like that, but I want to hear, Going Down the Bayou and all the songs from the movie and stuff, right? So I don't know, that part was a little surprising, but obviously we have to see how it will come through. The other part
should be fun.
That jumped out to me was that the Walt Disney Imagineer Charita Carter, who is, I believe, the one heading up this project, talked about they're trying to have what they use quotes, change the game when it comes to animatronics and scenic illusions on this ride. So that's the one thing I was really hoping for with this update was, while there's a lot of animatronics in Splash Mountain, a lot of them are pretty basic though. So, upgrading to much more modern animatronics, I think could bring it to even the next level. So I was glad to see them mention that.
Well, here's the thing. So you have, they're updating animatronics. So if they're going to have a bunch of new stuff, that means they're probably not going to be refurbing some of the old stuff. Unless it's something like, some animal like just
maybe just in the background type of thing,
right? That type of thing. So that means they're doing a heavy refurb on everything. If they're investing that money on illusions, and I think we said this last week, that would be. I love that ride just for the dark ride aspect of it. You take out the drop and all that stuff, that's fun, but the music and the scenes and everything else, the storytelling in that building is excellent, and I'm really looking forward to what a modern WDI can do. With that much volume,
with the ride that long, and those show scenes and stuff like that, fully agree. So very optimistic. We'll have to see. We know it's going to take a little while. I believe we reported last time they said it's going to be a little bit before it happens, but I think it'll be great once it does. The next item is a little bit of update about COVID vaccinations that touched a number of areas related to Disney. The first one, and I believe this is in response to how the Bahamas have now required all guests to be vaccinated. So Disney Cruise Line is now requiring all COVID guests who are 12 or older must provide documentation that they've been vaccinated. Prior to that, you could instead show proof of a negative test, COVID-19 test.
Which I never got, like, you have to show a negative test, because you could test negative one day and the next day you could be positive.
Yeah, I mean, they had to do one before they left and then one right at the ship, but obviously this is a lot better that, this way, even if people did, because obviously even if you have the vaccine, you can still catch COVID, but it should be much more minor, the people.
There's no one needing hospitalization on their ship, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And so we'll see. They said so far the order runs from September 3rd, or cruises from September 3rd through November 1st. We'll see if that gets extended and stuff like that.
That's going to be extended.
Yeah.
I just like that Disney's doing it, and they can, quote unquote, hide this under the guise of another country mandating it, so they have to do it, so they don't have to wade into the Florida politics.
Yep.
And we'll just leave it at that.
Exactly. The next one, though, we've talked about obviously how Disney was requiring their employees to get vaccinated, at least the non-union ones, and they were working with the unions. We know some of them already came to agreement, and a new one came out. The Equity Union reached an agreement on mandatory vaccination. So for those of you who don't know, Equity Union are the ones where all the performers and the actors and the ones in the shows that sing and dance are part of Equity. And so people are thinking this could mean good things for like the return of things like Hoop-Dee-Doo Review and the other shows and stuff like that. So hopefully that's the first step for this to see more of those shows come back. And they're also holding cast vaccination clinics. As we know, cast members that, at least for the ones in the unions that have agreed, they have until October 22nd to be fully vaccinated. So they are holding a number of vaccination clinics basically on property, so cast members can come right by and get vaccinated there.
And cast members have until October 22nd to be fully vaccinated. So that's what I'm showing on the screen right now, Phil, that you can't see.
Okay. And then I did just add these. I don't know if you had a chance to look up any of the images for this, but just some quick hits of things that I saw going around with a number of Walt Disney World attractions. The first one is, and this was bad timing for my wife's trip because this was one of her favorite rides, but Living with the Land has been closed for 8 days with an unannounced closure. They haven't said any details about it. We don't know when it's going to end or anything like that. I did hear one report, and it's, this is sort of second or third hand, but a cast member said that they installed a new fire alarm system in the ride, and it's taking until they can get it fully inspected and signed off and stuff like that, and just everything's backed up with inspectors and things.
So it's
like
not
that.
A cucumber trap or something?
That is that was the rumor of people were speculating that they were going to be putting up like plexiglass on the entire ride so you can't hop out for your free cucumbers. But hopefully it's not that.
No.
Somewhat interesting news. A permit was filed for work at the site of Primeval Whirl in Dinoland.
The end is near.
Yeah, so it's interesting. The company that it's filed with, it normally does like theming and construction, not demolition. So people are speculating maybe they're just going to be retheming the ride or just doing some work to refresh it versus tearing it down. But I guess we shall see. But at least some,
that wouldn't make sense.
You don't want to read into permits too much. But it's good to see, I guess, some progress that they're at least thinking about doing something with the space versus just leaving it sitting there closed.
I mean, how many times did we say they need to just demo all of that area, right?
Yeah.
So Primeval Whirl is a big chunk of that area, and I don't see them ever refurbing it just because the overhead problem with maintenance on the ride vehicle itself. So there's really no point into changing it around. You might as well put another spinner in there or something for the time being, right? Something cheap.
And then the last news I thought I would mention is that construction work does continue at the Tron Light Cycle coaster area. What I thought was interesting, though, today, obviously a lot of different things have been going on there, but they were doing some clearance envelope testing today or recently. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's where they put basically some vehicle onto the tracks that has like a big arch coming out of it. And so this way, when they can run it through, they can see would that hit any of the beams or anything like that. Basically trying to make sure that there's plenty of clearance, that you don't have, some 6'8" person sticks their arms up and they could potentially hit something or whatever. So
I've got the images online. I've been scrolling down and they're taking a look at it on the video. So
progress, who knows when this thing's going to get open, but it's nice to see some progress moving forward with it. Hopefully we can see progress on the railroad track so they can get the railroad up and running, but no sign of that yet. I'm just a little hopeful / bitter that it won't be up for the 50th, but we'll see. And that is it for the news. I will remind you of our social media accounts: Twitter @PodDBC, Instagram, the DBC Podcast, Facebook, DBC Pod, our YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe there, and our Discord channel.
So last week we teased that we were going to have a DBC expedition on transportation. So we're going to have that after Attractionality this week. We're going to skip right to it. We just went so long on Genie Plus. Now, since I was unplugged, I wasn't really paying attention to Discord or Disney social media. After the tidal wave of Genie Plus stuff, how did it kind of filter out over the week, Phil, that you've noticed?
I think there was a little chatter. I think other people put out stuff like we did. I think our video hopefully helped. It was actually we've gotten quite a few downloads. It's outpacing previous videos as far as people are downloading it. So hopefully people are finding it useful.
And go on to YouTube and hit subscribe, please. We need 30 something more subscribers. Custom URL. That's all I ask.
That's it. That's all we ask.
That's it.
I think people have just kind of settled in. It is what it is. And until there's more information about exactly what rides are going to cost and what they're going to cost, and until you really see it in action and, how quickly things go and stuff, everyone's kind of like, well, it is what it is. And, obviously you still see some people saying, well, that's it. I'm never going back to Disney or whatever. But I think it kind of, for lack of a better word, we've just accepted it.
We need to have, I'm just spitballing here, Phil. We need to have a Discord roundtable one day, maybe in the next month or so. Maybe we can get some tidbits of rumors or information how it's going to function. Maybe like Adam, aka Cassistone, come on, because he's really good with the metrics and the numbers about standby versus fast pass, and he can kind of speculate on what that's like. And then maybe we can get Ryan on, and he can complain about stuff or whatever. I don't know. We could say, well, it's not coming to Animal Kingdom because there's not enough stuff at Animal Kingdom to have.
Yeah, there's nothing people would pay for.
Except for Flight of Passage, I guess. But that's old. Anyway, let's get to Attractionality. This week was an interesting one, I think. When I answered these, I did not answer them with an unbiased look. It was completely all biased, except for one. So this week's Attractionality is the Country Bear Jamboree. I'm going to read it from the screen. Have a knee-slapping good time at this jolly country and western musical review, starring a cast of singing bears. Step inside a rustic theater known as the Grizzly Hall and take your seat before the lights dim. Clap along to 18 audio animatronic hillbilly bears play and sing during this 16-minute foot-stomping celebration. You'll hear a medley of original classic tunes, all performed by the zaniest critters in the woods. Phil, when was the last time you stepped into the Grizzly Hall to watch the Country Bear Jamboree?
We did that, I think, 2 trips ago. I'm trying to remember if we did it our last trip or if it was the one before. It's definitely not one we get to every single trip, but we get to it quite often. We enjoy it, and the kids find it funny. So it's something unique. So we do it more often than not, but it's not like, we have to plan our day around getting to it.
I've never seen this until I was an adult.
Okay.
So when we went and saw it our last trip in 2019, and I loved it. Now, here's why I loved it, because it brings back nostalgia from 1980s Chuck E. Cheese from back in the day. And it's absolutely fantastic. So I'm like, this is my spot right here. This is what I love. The kids liked it too. And before I start talking about it, because they're going to be part of the questions, let's take a look at some of the scores here, and we'll hit off some of the numbers, the questions. Country Bear Jamboree, how much do you like the concept of this attraction, singing bear audio animatronics? Phil, what did you pick for this one?
I gave it a 4. I mean, I think overall I like it, whether it's a 4 or 5. I think there could be more to it. It's kind of simple. And so I think, compared to something more complex, if I'm comparing it to like Rise of the Resistance or something like that, it's like the concept of it is just
you can't
a little bit
compare it to a dark ride.
I don't know.
Come on.
I guess I'm just trying to think like what qualifies as a 5, and it didn't quite reach it for me. But I think the idea of an animatronic heavy show aimed at families is very good.
I think you have to compare it to things where you sit in a theater and watch something.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like either Hall of Presidents or American Experience or Turtle Talk with Crush or Turtle Talk, something like that, where you just you sit still and you watch something. I gave this a 5 because I love the concept of it. It's just basically it's a people eater. You sit down, you play some music, and you watch things go. I don't think there's anything bad with it. Like, so what do you? It's hard to grade this out, right?
Yeah.
Because when you have a dark ride, like for example, Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, right? I would score that a 3 or a 4, only because I like the subject matter, but the dark ride itself is fairly simple. It's basically all cardboard cutouts, that whole ride, right? So it gets low grades just because of the quality of the ride itself, I guess, if you want to say that, right? Compared to like Tokyo's Winnie the Pooh, right? So there's not many old school animatronics, so I'm a sucker for old school animatronics. I'm a sucker for Chuck E. Cheese, so I love the concept. That's why I ranked it a 5. Question number 2: how well do you think Country Bear Jamboree delivers for its target audience?
So this one I also gave a 4, and partly because I don't know who its target audience is anymore. I think
nobody anymore.
The target audience is people who fondly remember it or have like nostalgic feelings for it. So
I guess, yeah.
I think for those it does. I think as a family friendly, I don't know if it's so family friendly anymore with some of the lines in it and stuff.
Well,
so
yeah, maybe. Well, that's what I was going to say at the top. Yeah. Like, I love it because there's those, much like any other cartoon for kids, there's always the hidden, double entendre
that go over their heads a little bit. Yeah, definitely some of those. So I don't know. Like I said, probably similar reason to the other one where I gave it a 4. I think it's good at what it does, but I'm just not, in 2021, I'm not quite sure who its target audience is.
Well, here's the funny thing. Like, how many people know it's actually there? Right, so you're walking from, let's say, you're making a right outside of Pirates, right? You go through Tortuga Tavern, you go all the way around, Splash and Thunder Mountain are on your left, and you're walking towards the Haunted Mansion. That's literally a strip of like everybody ignores everything on your right. Right, you got the shooting gallery that either is working or people can't see it because of the blinding sun and the shade. You've got the oh gosh, what's the name of the hotel that's the restaurant that's right there?
Well, there's the Diamond Horseshoe.
Horseshoe, yes, thank you. I wanted to say Golden Horseshoe for whatever reason.
Well, the Golden Horseshoe is the one at Disneyland. They upgraded from gold to diamond.
There you go. So you got that, which I always wanted to go in, but I've never been in. You got the Country Bear Jamboree right there. And then you've got the 2 big breaks where you got the big bathroom where you have a sunglass hut and the 2 big bathrooms on the left, right? And then you're right into Liberty Square basically after that. Right. So I don't think people know the Country Bear Jamboree is there.
There's an attraction there, like a really big footprint attraction.
So the only time I've seen it very crowded is when it's raining and people want to get out of the rain, right? So there's something here. Let's go check it out. I gave this a 5 only because there's lowered expectations for it, right? There's not like, I mean, it's not like Hall of Presidents, and it's like a thing that everybody knows about. We talked about this in our first DBC expedition, right? Hall of Presidents is basically how you teach your children about American history at this point, right? With a lot of stuff. Country Bear Jamboree, people don't know it's there. So you're going in with like, oh, I don't know what this is. Let's check it out. And I think it delivers for something that's no wait. You go in. It's what's the runtime? Is it like 16 minutes?
I'd have to check because it's had different versions, but it's somewhere in that area.
It is.
It used to be longer, but
because I only reason why I say 60 minutes because I remembered I just actually read Sing during the 60-minute foot stopping celebration in the description.
Shows you how well I was paying attention.
Yes. Well, I think it delivers based off of those expectations. Right, it's not you're not going in super hyped. You might be pleasantly surprised depending on who you are, I guess. Question number 3 is how much do you personally enjoy Country Bear Jamboree? Phil.
So I also gave this a 4. I really enjoy it, but I think it needs some TLC. It needs some updates, and I wish they had brought back the seasonal shows. just to update it, bring back the Christmas
Right.
show and stuff like that. So I think it's more of those I enjoyed for what it is, but I think it could be better without, and I'm not even saying you have to like totally redo it, just with a little bit of upgrades and bringing back the seasonal, it could be better. So that's why I give it a 4.
Right. So the first 2 questions, number 5 was by far the most popular answer. Question number 3 for me personally, how much I personally enjoy it. I gave this a 4, and you could probably convince me to give it a 3 because the sound is off in here.
It is, yeah.
It's hard to hear a lot of the singing. Like you have to strain to hear it. If you got kids sitting next to you or your own kids are sitting on your lap, it's going to be very difficult to hear all the jokes and the singing and stuff like that. The music is not balanced properly with the dialogue, and sometimes the music or the background music is louder, and you can't really understand people. So I think they need to work on that a little bit. Unless the last time I went, something was off. I don't recall. Question number 4 is, how well do you think Country Bear Jamboree fits into Frontierland and also the Magic Kingdom? Phil, why don't you go with your answer here?
So I was probably I don't know if I gave this just to be different or whatever, but I gave it the 3. I was the one that gave it a 3. I think I'm partly like...
Wait, let's put it on screen. There's Phil with the lonely vote for number 3.
I think I'm swayed by the fact that it wasn't built to be in Magic Kingdom. It was supposed to be at the ski resort Walt wanted to build. And then they decided to move it over here when that didn't get built and stuff. So I don't know if that's biasing me. And then I think just again with some of the risque jokes, I don't know if it belongs in Magic Kingdom in 2021. I don't know. So I mean, you probably talked me into a 4 or something like that. Like I said, maybe just to be a little controversial, I gave it a 3.
I gave it a 5 just because I started clicking 5s when I went down because I love how like old school it is, right? Because Tiki Room is a favorite because it's just old school. It's how they made rides 50 years ago, right?
I definitely agree that aspect of it fits Magic Kingdom and that sort of thing for sure.
Now, well, how well do I think it fits into Frontierland? It's great. I also think Frontierland should be closed down and something else needs to put down there because no one cares about the American West anymore, right? It's not part of the cultural zeitgeist of the United States.
Yeah.
No one cares about cowboys and Indians anymore, thankfully. Now, I just placed this in Frontierland and I voted for a 5. If you want to talk about Magic Kingdom, I probably would have gotten lower with this one. Not for your opinion because of the language and the jokes. Well, not language, but the jokes and kind of that type of stuff. But because, it would fit if the land around it was different. Like it was like a magical forest or if it was whatever theming, right? But Frontierland itself, it's kind of... Especially now when Tiana's ride goes in there.
I know they're going to change that area into New Orleans Square. What are they going to do with it?
It's just going to be a medley of stuff, right? So who knows what the future of Frontierland is going to be by the time there's the 75th anniversary at Walt Disney World. Who knows?
Maybe Tron will be done by then.
Maybe. Cross your fingers. That being said, this was a solid 4 to 5 for everybody. There wasn't too much, This is the one thing I really don't like about Attractionality. Everybody loves the attractions. No one wants to change anything, right? It's crazy Disney people never this is the best thing in the world. Never change it. Or I kind of like it, but let's not change it, right?
I think about the interesting thing with some of these, especially these, for lack of a better term, like lesser rides, like the non-headliners, is how many people are like, oh, I never did that. That's one that always gets me. And it's like, really? Like even some people that are like locals, it's like, oh, I never did it. It's like, wait, what? You've never done that? So I think the people that do it are the ones that like it, and they're the ones that are voting on it. So you don't really spend time doing attractions you don't like.
So we talked about this already. Follow-up question this week is, should it be removed, as in just like close the doors, lock and key? And if it does, are you updating it to something, or are you completely changing it out? What are your thoughts?
So I think as a minimum, it needs updating. Like I said, you were talking about the sound and the animatronics could use some work and stuff like that. At a minimum, it needs that, and probably could tweak some of the jokes and stuff like that. But I think you raised the big question of more of what happens to Frontierland. If with the retheme, do they go to more of a New Orleans Square, and then you could almost make this into like a Mardi Gras themed animatronic show and bring in some of the Louis the alligator from Princess and the Frog and stuff like that. So I don't know. It kind of depends more what they do with the land, I think.
Here's an idea. If they're going New Orleans Square, you could put like Tiana's kitchen in there, right? And it's just a bunch of her friends trying to cook dinner on a busy night, and it's just a running around type of thing.
Yeah.
You also had the rumor pre-COVID that they were going to put Toy Story stuff in there, which I thought was kind of interesting, only because of Woody and he's a cowboy in his Frontierland, right? Yeah. So potentially, would that really fit? Not. I don't think going forward now because Toy Story is over. They're not making any new ones, and why are you investing in a night? Well, I mean.
Well, they're building now they're building the new restaurant over in Toy Story Land and stuff like that. So I think they have that whole area. They're not going to put it in the Magic Kingdom now.
I'm trying to think. That's an IP that's in two different parks, right? I'm trying to think. I'm not missing anything in Epcot that has Toy Story attached to it. There's not many IPs that are stretched across multiple parks. Mm-hmm. So there's plenty of Toy Story, all over the place. I can't think of anything. I mean, I think. I said this before. I think Frontierland as a land itself is going to go through a lot of changes over the next couple decades or sooner if Disney wants to spend money on it. Because I don't think Disney really wants to showcase cowboys and Indians that much anymore. Big Thunder Mountain's just a runaway train type of thing. You've got the boats, and then you've got Liberty Square, which I think is always going to be there. Haunted Mansion is classic; that's not changing, and that so they might want to start kind of spreading that down a little bit, and it might be interesting. Kind of bleed. That's easier to bleed from Liberty Square into like New Orleans, Tiana, whatever that might be. I don't know. And that would, if you have like the bayou and the swamp, that could easily transition into the back end of Adventureland over there by Pirates too.
Pirates and stuff for sure.
Transition from jungle to swamp is an easy kind of switch, I guess. I don't know. All right, Phil, are you ready for this week's delayed DBC expedition?
With all that extra time, I hope so.
Yes. So Phil had the great idea of coming up with digging into Disney's transportation as a whole, and that includes like the monorail, which we're going to talk about today and next week. But the bus systems, the boats, the ferries. We're probably going to take a look at the evolution of the highways around Walt Disney World, how things have changed. Air access, my Disney experience, the start, and I guess the quick downfall. Demise is a better term for it. Yes. But we're kind of digging into any of these topics. And if there's something that were you thinking about that's on transportation that we haven't mentioned, please send in something that you're interested in learning about. We'll definitely do the research and give you our own book report on it coming up. So, exactly. Phil, why don't you take it away with DBC Expedition Transportation Monorail Part 1.
Yeah, so I think we wanted to start with the monorail, even though when I suggested it, Jason's like, "Oh, we're going to start with the big one."
The big one, yes.
But I think when you think about the Disney parks, especially the stateside ones, you probably think about the castles first, and not too far after that, you're probably thinking about the monorail, the highway in the sky, and kind of that symbol of it, and how integrated it is with both Disneyland and Walt Disney World. Obviously for Disney, it started at Disneyland in California, and then became a key part of the Walt Disney World Resort, specifically part of Phase 1 of the Florida project, and also would have been a key part of Walt's vision of Epcot that would have really transported people through the whole Florida project. And it was also added at Tokyo Disneyland. So those are the three parks that currently have a monorail system. Just to give you a little bit of idea of scale, at Walt Disney World, there are 14.7 miles of monorail track. Disneyland has about 2.5 miles, and Tokyo Disneyland has a little over 3 miles. So a little bit over 20 miles total of Disney monorails around the world. And as far as how crowded they are, I had the numbers for Walt Disney World. On average, they get about 150,000 people a day.
That's crazy. That's nuts. That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously multiple trips and stuff because you have people going between the resorts and to the Magic Kingdom and back and to Epcot and stuff like that. But you figure if each park's got 50,000 people in it, it adds up. But that's a lot of people, right? Using a transportation system at a theme park. So
I don't know if you've done any research, Phil. Would you be able to guess the amount of bus riders at Disney versus the monorail riders? Is it like a factor of 10 or I mean 10 would be 1.5 million people on a bus every single day.
I'd have to check that up. I mean, the big thing with the monorail too is even if you're local or whatever and you're driving to the Magic Kingdom, unless you take the ferry, you're taking the monorail to get to to the Magic Kingdom.
Right.
Whereas, the buses are more for people that are staying on property and stuff like that. And we know, quite a few people that come to the parks aren't staying on property, but I could try to figure that out when we cover buses as the next.
That's a future homework project for us when we get to it.
Exactly.
So when you start talking about monorails, right? So the first I've ever heard of a monorail is obviously it was like everybody else is Walt Disney World's monorail, right? I thought of Disney World, people might think Disneyland, but monorail is synonymous with Disney, whatever version of it is your favorite, and the one that first saw it, wherever you first saw it. But where did monorails start? Because the first monorail was not in Disneyland. These go back into the 19th century, which I was kind of digging around. And there's a lot of failed experiments. So there's a whole bunch of different monorails, different designs. It was basically, how do I build a cheap train system, right? Because I think back then, you had all the locomotives and the steam lines. They're being put all over the place, zigzagging, but 2 rails. So how do we cut the cost in half, essentially, right? So the first long-term monorail that ran the longest, because there's a couple that were thought of but maybe tested and kind of fell through. I didn't list any of these here, but the first one was actually in Ireland that ran from 1888 to 1924, and it was basically built on the cheapest. So there was another monorail that was put into use in 1890 in Brooklyn. But I don't think it really counts as a monorail because basically there was a single track that it ran on, or a single rail that it ran on, but there were wheels above on a wooden lattice almost above it, and it just had 2 tires that went on it. So it's basically like a tripod, right? So it had a rail above and a rail below. So that's not really a monorail, right? So I don't really think that counts. But there was a lot of other monorail systems that were thought of in the first half of the 20th century that never went anywhere. Mm-hmm. And I think the idea of it, and I might be skipping ahead. I'm going to open this up to you. Actually, we're going to talk about this in a second. But there was no really serious plans until the first true monorail that was built in 1956 in Disneyland. And the only other places that you could probably see them are either at the airport, Newark Airport, where I used to fly out all the time. They have a monorail that goes back and forth between parking lots and the different terminals. And then other amusement parks. And I think the amusement parks just have them only because Disneyland has them, so we're going to build a monorail itself. Because there's one. Did you ever ride the one at Hershey Park? Because I know they have a little tiny monorail as well.
Yeah, I've ridden the one at Hershey Park, and we've also done the one the Bronx Zoo has one.
Okay. Yes, we've been on that one.
Yeah. But it's definitely more of like an attraction there. It's not.
And they're very slow.
Yes, it's not a means of transportation. But yeah, thinking more about, where did Walt even get the idea to do a monorail, or where did he come up with this concept, and why did he push for it so much? And he actually got the idea where he's gotten other ideas when he was traveling through Europe. For example, when he saw the Tivoli Gardens, that sort of inspired the design of Disneyland a bit. But however, for the monorail, it was inspired by the Alweg Corporation that was located near Cologne, Germany. And the story goes that Walt discovered this monorail when he was on his European vacation with his wife, Lillian, and they were driving down a country road outside of Cologne, and they rounded a bend, and they just saw this monorail passing by the road right above them. And then Walt basically took that as a sign that they need to go and talk to this company and say, well, what the heck is that? And I need to have that at my theme park. And even just thinking ahead more for his urban planning vision.
Yeah, I mean, he was just slowly getting into planning the cities and everything else at that point. So that was kind of heavy in his mind, especially after building the little train set the miniature train set in his backyard that he could ride himself.
Exactly. Yeah.
There was also one thing I found in Germany also, and I'm going to butcher this completely. That's why Phil's laughing, because he's seeing what I have to actually attempt to pronounce here coming up next. But one of the things he might actually have seen, it's just north of Cologne, Germany, the Wuppertal Schwarzbahn. You can look up monorail, but it was a suspended system, which was completed in 1903. So think Peter Pan's Flight is basically how it put up. So I don't know if he actually saw that also, and that kind of spurred.
And if not, maybe either that or just Cologne, Germany is like some hotbed for monorail development or something.
Maybe,
like that.
Maybe.
So anyway, so after he saw that, he invited the Disney Engineering group. At that time, it was headed by Joe Fowler, who went on to become construction at Disneyland and also was involved in Walt Disney World. Roger Broggie, who headed up the studio machine shop, and Bob Gurr. And they reported back after talking to the Alweg company that they said this plan offered the best prospects for building an actual monorail at Disneyland or just going forward. It thought it had, the economy of it, the stability, and all around practicality fit. And so the Alweg had started working on this in 1952, and they started partnering with Disney in 1958 to have joint efforts in making a prototype for Disneyland. Now, what Alweg had done so far was a very simple track, had very wide turns and on a flat grade. And of course, that wasn't good enough for Walt. He wanted something that had tighter turns, it had overpasses, and grades of up to 7%, because that's what he figured would be able to prove that this could work on different terrains and topographical situations and that sort of thing, because he wanted to prove that this could work in a metropolitan setting. Now, the main individual that I previously mentioned that was responsible for this at WED Enterprises, which is now Walt Disney Imagineering, is Disney legend Bob Gurr, who has often said that if it moves on wheels at Disneyland, I probably designed it. And so the monorail trains themselves were developed by Bob, partly because Walt didn't like the look of what Alweg had developed for their trains. And Bob said that, he could see why, that the German trains looked like big old streetcars. And it was, he described them as being as gracious as the front of a World War II German bomber. And so he could see why Walt didn't really like the look of it. So instead, Bob was inspired by Buck Rogers comics and decided to design the monorail with more futuristic look. And if you've ever seen those original monorails that were at Disneyland, they definitely looked very futuristic, definitely right out of something from a comic book. But he thought that if it had, kind of these strong shapes and classic designs, that it will endure time. And obviously we've seen the proof of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought this time I'd do a little bit of show and tell, since we were talking about Bob Gurr. One of the pieces, or most prized pieces in my Disney memorabilia collection, is I have a good Disney friend of mine gave me this piece. If anybody out there has one of the toy monorail sets that you can put around your Christmas tree or whatever, he got a piece of that track, and he actually got it signed by Bob Gurr. So I don't know if you can see it.
No, there we go, right there.
So just if anybody has one of those tracks,
that's pretty cool.
I have a piece of monorail track signed by Bob Gurr. So I have a couple of, I like Bob. He's a really interesting guy. So anytime I can get anything signed by him, I'm all for that. So going back to the production of the Disneyland monorail, it opened on June 14th, 1959, which was part of the first major expansion of the park, which had opened just about 4 years prior to that. The other major additions were the Matterhorn bobsled attraction and the submarine voyage. Now, the original monorail at Disneyland was about 0.8 of a mile long. It had 2 trains, although only monorail red was ready for opening day. Blue was about 2 weeks behind schedule. And this was almost like a second opening of the park, just like how the opening of the park, they had the television cameras and live feed and stuff like that. Walt did that again for this 1959 sort of reopening or re-expansion.
Well, let me jump in 1 second, because wasn't it part of the Behind the Attraction episode with the Haunted Mansion? They talked about the different kind of phases of opening, I want to say. Mm-hmm. So if you want to get a taste of what the park was like kind of going through at the first 5 to 10 years of operation, that's a good episode to watch.
Yeah, and they also talk about the monorail I just saw, because they just released the second set of those episodes, and they have one on the Disneyland Hotel, and they talk about the monorail.
I have not seen that one yet, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. So Walt had invited over 2,000 members of the press. There were celebrities and dignitaries, and including among those was then Vice President Richard Nixon, his wife, Pat, and their daughters. And so whenever you talk about the opening of the monorail, Bob Gurr refers to that as the day that he kidnapped the Vice President of the United States.
And I'm showing the picture, Phil, of Walt just kind of arm on the top of the monorail with the president and the first family kind of. Oh, no, he was the governor. Was he the vice president at the time?
He was the vice president at the time.
Excuse me, yes. Yeah. I'm getting my history. Okay, so just kind of sitting there like, hey, isn't this nice? I could get a good price for this thing. It's like kind of hanging out in the car like that. It's pretty cool.
So, and what to keep in mind is the monorails weren't, super tested and running for years. Remember, they were just building them with this company in Germany. And so basically every day leading up to June 14th, the monorail had broken down. They haven't had a successful run of the monorail yet. And to go through all the details, it's really amazing that Bob Gurr and the German engineer from Alweg named Konrad Deller, they basically worked day and night, where they would work on the train, then go back to the Disneyland Hotel for dinner, go to Deller's hotel room and create sketches for replacement parks to try to fix these trains that aren't working.
It's never a good sign when you're sketching replacement parts.
Like the week before something's supposed to open to the public, a truck would come by around midnight, pick up the drawings, take them to the machine shop in Burbank. They would work overnight making the parts based on these sketches and then bring them back to Disneyland the next morning, where Bob Kerr would install them and hope that the trains would work.
I want to jump in here as somebody that uses AutoCAD and gets like products made in my real life type of thing. CAD is great because it's precise. Using a slide rule and pencil and paper and eraser, I can't believe that some of these. I mean, this is how amazing some of these engineers were. They're able to do this overnight, and this is exactly what it is. And then the machinists, without a computerized CNC machine, they're doing this all. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Much respect.
Basically, they got it up and they got it there and they got it in place, at the station. And Bob was basically like, look, they can get their photo of this, and then I'll try to drive it out of the station so they get the shop, and it could blow up or get on fire, 100 yards down the road, but at least they've got the shot for television.
Yes,
that's perfect. Not exactly what happened, because as he had it set up, Walt Disney starts approaching the train along with Richard Nixon and his daughters, Art Linkletter, who was hosting the television show, Disneyland security, and the Secret Service, because this was the vice president after all. And everyone got on the train for the photo op, the one that I think you're showing there, Jason, along with the security, because they weren't going to be in the photo. And Bob turned on, powered up the monorail just to get the air conditioning going, because it was June in Southern California. At that point, Walt said, "Let's go." So you listen to Walt, and they eased the train out of the station. And obviously Bob was worried that this wasn't going to work and they wouldn't get their television shot and that sort of thing. And then he got really worried when he realized the Secret Service had been left behind on the station.
He kidnapped the vice president, indeed.
Exactly. Fortunately, this was the first successful full lap around. And, nothing blew up or anything like that. And of course, they're easing into the station after making the eighth of a mile lap.
Oh, wait, again, I'm going to interrupt again. Here is it. So to borrow from Marvel, here's a nice what if episode. Yeah. What if it blew up at Disneyland and the second family was injured on this one? What would have happened to Disneyland in the future if Disney as a company probably would not exist?
Exactly. And so they're pulling into the station, and Bob can breathe a sigh of relief, except then Nixon's daughters indicated they wanted to go again, of course, Walt said, "Bobby, give him another ride." And so he sped back up. As he looks back, he literally sees the Secret Service running along the train platform trying to get onto the train. So fortunately, they made it around again, and Walt was just beaming with pride as he had his new toy that he was able to show off to the Vice President of the United States. Ooh. So just some great stories. This is why Walt Disney is one of those legendary figures, because things like this just happened, right? And they got recorded and they were on TV and stuff like that. So
absolutely amazing.
So it's great. And just to kind of finish up with the Disneyland, and as I mentioned, it was featured in the Disneyland Hotel behind the attraction, but the track was extended in 1961 to connect to the Disneyland Hotel. This made it the first monorail system that would travel along a highway, because if you know where the highways and stuffs are, where the Disneyland Hotel is versus the park, and it actually had to cross over a public street. It's the first time a monorail system ever did that. And this extended the length of the track to what it is now, which is about 2.5 miles. It's been adjusted and moved to fit into the Grand Californian and stuff like that, but it hasn't really changed much since then. And I think that, kind of is the point where we're going to break before we get into sort of more of the future and where we went from there with the monorail. But I think we'll cover that in part 2 of our Disney expedition into the monorails.
Yes. So we're going to talk a lot about Walt Disney World, and basically we're going to talk about how it's designed, where it is. A lot of this stuff might be obvious, but there's a lot of little things that, like, do they really go that fast, or do they go really slow? So we're going to find out all the technical stuff, kind of give you a rundown of the refurbs and the different colors. So you might not know that there's actually a lot of detail behind these type of things. So I found that interesting, as a lot of the stuff was either new to me or a reminder, like, oh yeah, they do that, because it's been off. That being said, let's go to our DBC recommends for the week. And I'm really going to recommend that Parks Blog episode with Tiana. Make sure you watch that video that Phil saw. I only saw the first minute of it, and it kind of give me an idea if you've watched the what do they call the behind the scenes Mandalorian Roundtable?
Oh yeah,
there's a name for it. There's a title for it, but they do.
Well, they have the Disney I think they call them the gallery.
Yes,
yeah.
that's what it is. So it kind of gave me some of those vibes when I kind of sped through it. I'm probably going to end up watching either tomorrow or during the week when I have some time to sit down for 30 minutes. That being said, folks, thank you for listening and watching. Remember to subscribe on YouTube and like them. If you're listening on iTunes, please give us a 5-star review. That helps us be found by other people out there. And we hope to have you back next week to learn more about the monorails. Have a good week, everybody. Take care.
Everyone.